This is Baba Kama Daf Pei Gimel Baruch Hashem. Another exciting day in the world of the Daf as we're concluding this lengthy and not such a simple parak of Parak Meruba, the seventh parak, and then we'll be diving straight into the eighth parak, Parak HaChayvel. So let's pick it up on the last line of Pei Beis Amid Beis, in which the Gemara today really continues off of the previous Gemara that taught us that one should not learn Chochmas Yevanis. Asks the Gemara on the last line, V'Chochmas Yevanis mi asira? Is it really forbidden to learn Greek? V'Atani learned in a Brisa. Amar Rabbi, taught Rabbi, Eretz Yisrael, in Eretz Yisrael. As we turn over to Pei Gimel Amid Aleph, Lashain Sursi Lama. Why do they speak Sursi? Ay Lashan HaKodesh, ay Lashan Yavanis. Said Rabbi, why are you speaking Sursi in Eretz Yisrael? And rather, what should you speak? And if not, said Rabbi, either Lashan HaKodesh or Lashan Yavanis. And we're assuming, if we just said a moment ago, you should not be speaking, should not be understanding and learning Chochmas Yevanis, the Gemara is understanding that seemingly Lashain Yevanish is the same thing. V'amar Rav Yosi, and taught Rav Yosi, B'chol Lashan Arami Lama. Why speak Arami? Similarly, Oy Lashan HaKodesh, Oy Lashan Parsi. Either speak Lashan HaKodesh, Lashan Parsi. So what do we see? That's what Rav Yosi said about those who spoke Arami. But from the first statement of Rabbi, what do we see? We see that Rabbi favored speaking Yevani over Sursi. So how could it be that it's forbidden to learn Chachmas Yevanis? Explains the Gemara Amri, Loshan Yevani Lechad, Chachmas Yevanis Lechad. The obvious teretz that there's two different things. There's the Chachma, there's the wisdom of Yevanis, then there's the Loshan, just talking their language. Says the Gemara, Chachmas Yevanis mi asira. Is really the Chachma Yevanis Aser. Now we're sort of going more direct into that which we ended off the previous year. Asked the Gemara, V'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Misham Rashbag. Yehuda Amar Shmuel said the name of Shimon Gamliel, quoting a pasuk in Eicha, Eini oilol nafshi mikol b'nois. Iri. Said Shimon Gamliel, I applied to myself the pasuk that my eye, Einai, is oilula, is disgusting because of me, more than all the daughters of the city. And he explains, Elef Yoladim Hayu B'Beis. There were 1,000 children, 1,000 young men in the house of my father. 500 learned Torah. 500 learned Yavanis. And said Rav Shimon Gamliel, the only one that remains from all those 1,000 is Ela Ani Kan Uben Achim, and the son of my father's brother Ben Achi Abba Be'asya and Asya. So what do we see? We see that under the tutelage of the father of Rav Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Gamliel, they learned 500 of them learned Chachos Yevanis. So how can it be that learning Chachos Yevanis is Aser? Explains the Gemara Amri Shiny Beis Rav Gamliel. By the Rav Gamliel, there were different rules. Why? Sheyekrayvim lemalchos, because they were close to the malchos, and therefore it was necessary for them to know the Chachmas of Yevanis. And the Gemara proves the Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa about 15 lines down. First line is Hamisaber. Hamisaber kumei, one who cuts his hair like a kumi. Harezem darke amiri, that's a din of darke amiri. Chukas agayim, it's aser. Avataloimis baruvein. However, there was someone by the name of Avataloimis baruvein itila the saber kumi. The Chachamim allowed him to get such a haircut. Why? Because he was close to the Malchus. Therefore, there were unique leniencies similarly. And explains the Gemara, shall basically Rav Gamliel etir lam lesaber b'chachmus Yevanis mimnei shekaroivim lemalchus. So the Gemara is proving that indeed Chachmas Yavanis is aser. However, there are unique scenarios of people that had to be close to the government and therefore were allowed to learn Chachmas Yavanis for that particular time. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah taught us that one cannot raise a dog unless it's tied with a chain. Tanarabban. Gemara continues by quoting a brayser at the two dots, 15 lines from the white lines. One cannot raise a dog unless it's tied up with a chain. However, aval megadal, what can you raise? However, you're allowed to have a dog in the city that's near a border town. You tie it up during the day, you don't want it to damage, but at night, matirai, you're allowed to undamage it balayla so that the dog could protect you in such a dangerous situation. Tanya, we learned in the Brayz, it's a similar din of raising pig. That they both get a curse. Those who are megadol chazirim and those who are megadol that raised kilovim. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef bar Minyumi Amar Rav Nachum b'chol yer asmuch l'saber. Any place that's near l'saber dami, any place that's near the border of Eretz Yisrael. Targuma Nahardai. That's what Nahardai was referring to. Like the city of Nahardai, and that is where one is allowed to raise a dog in order to have the protection that is necessary. Says the Gemara story. Darish Rav Dustoi Timin Bira, Rav Dustoi Timin Bira told the following story that the pasuk teaches us Ubenucha Yoimar Shuva Hashem Rivais Alva Yisrael. And when the Aron rested, Moshe would say, return, come back, Shuva Hashem. Return to the myriads, the Rivavais Alpha Yisrael. What do we learn from this pasuk? Lamedcha she'ein shchina shayra. The shchina does not rest al Yisrael pachos b'shnei alafim, less than 2 myriads again, and which is shnei alafim. 2,000 ushnei revavais. And 2 Ravavais, or Ravav is 10,000, so that's 20,000, and 2,000, 22,000. So Lemecha Shein Shchinashar Yisrael Pachos V'Shnei Alav V'Shnei Ravavais Chasar Achas. So therefore, if you had Chasar Achas, you had 21,999 people, and there's a pregnant woman, and she's going to complete the 22,000. And again, what's the incredible mila of this child that's going to be born? This is going to bring the Shechina, as the Shechina only rests on such high numbers. And if dog bit her or barked, the Pila and she miscarried. Nimsa zeh, this dog was what? Kairem l'Shechina sheistalek me Yisrael. The Shechina left Klal Yisrael, did not rest because of it. Another story, he hits 2 lines on the white lines. Alas lemeipa bahu beisa. Certain woman who entered the house to bake bread. Navach ba'kelev, a dog barked. Amar la marye lotes isu minei. Owner said, don't worry, don't be afraid of my dog. The common line, shekule minai. You know why? Because I've removed its teeth, and therefore the dog will not harm you. Amrle, she said, Shkili tivusech v'shadeh chaziri kvar nod v'lad. Just take your good and throw it on the thorns. You know why? Because kvar nod v'lad, unfortunately, the fetus has already been dislodged, meaning she miscarried due to the bark of the dog. Continues the Gemara on the first very white line, quoting the final din in the Mishnah of Ein Parsin and Ishvin, the Yavanim, you're not allowed to spread out nets to capture the doves unless there are 30 risks from the settled city. Ask the Gemara, Miyas is Kuli Hai, do the doves travel so far? Vatanan, Marchigin is a Shevach Menir Chamishim Amma. You have to distance the Shevach 50 Amos. So it sounds like 50 amos is the distance that a dove is going to travel. And when the Mishnah said 30 ris, that's 8,000 amos. Amar Abaya Misha Chayetuva. Says Abaya, they travel very far. Indeed, up to 8,000 amos. But Kersaya B'chamisha Amma Malya. Their stomachs are filled with the grain they eat in the first 50 amos. So in order to protect the city, that's why they put the Shevach 50 amos away, so that the doves are not going to be consuming the crop of the city. However, they will indeed fly much further. Says the Gemara, they only fly 30 ris and no further, Vatanya, but we learned by Yishuv in a settled area. Now let us spread out the nets. Even 100 mil sounds like 100 mil, which is much more than 30 ris. 30 ris is 4 mil, which you just said is 8,000 amos, but we see that they travel much further. Says the Gemara, Kiramim. That's only by the Kram they travel so far. Rabbi Amar B'Yishav Shayvchin. Says the Gemara, 1 second. So why isn't that enough of a reason onto its own that you should not be allowed to spread nest due to the fact that there's these doves that are owned privately in such an area? Ema says the Gemara, with Kayisha wants Vibay, same with the Hefker Vibay, same with the day, or it's his own, and therefore we're not worried he's going to harm anyone by spreading out a net. Hadron Halach Meruba. Hopefully, through this parak, we've gained a newfound appreciation for the drashais, as we've had so many drashais back and forth, klalu pradu klaus, different ribuyim, etc. And with that, we move on to Daf Pei Gimel Amid Beis. A new parak, says the parak, Chayvel Bechaveiroi. If someone damages his friend, what is halacha? Chayav alav mishom chamisha dvarim. And these are really halachas that we've been mentioning so many times, and now we get to see them bimkaimai in the appropriate place. That what happens when someone harms another? You have to pay chamisha dvarim, says the Mishnah. What are the 5 items? Benezek, the damage, betzar, the pain. Beriboy, number 3 is healing. Number 4 is besheves, the fact that he can't work. And number 5 is ubaishes, and 4, humiliation. And explains the Mishnah these 5 entities. Benezek, how do you pay for damages? You blinded his eye, you cut off his hand, she retroactively broke his leg. So you know what we do? Ryan Isai, we view this person, Kilu Eved Nimkar Bashak. He's an Eved, as if he's a slave sold in the marketplace. And therefore, Vishamina, we evaluate Kama Hayo Yafe, Kama Hu Yafe. How much was he worth with 2 eyes before he lost an eye, with 2 arms before he lost a leg, etc. And how much is he worth now? And that is the value of the nezek, the damages that you must pay, number 1. Number 2 is sar, the pain. Says the Gemara, Kivai, oy b'shvod, oy b'masmer. If you hurt him with a spit, or with a shvod, with a nail, kivai just means hurt him. B'shvod, oy b'masmer, with a spit or a nail. Va'afilu al siparno, even on his nail, on fingernail meaning. Makim she'nais chabura, in a place that doesn't really make a wound. How much would a person be willing to get paid to suffer such pain? A difficult parameter, but meaning, honing in, says Rashi, that based on the level of the istiness, based on how much a person cannot handle pain, so therefore the payment for his pain is that much more. Continues the Mishnah, Riboy, how do you pay for his healing? If you damage him, chayav l'rabaisai, got to pay the doctor's bills. If he has sores that developed on him, due to the makkah, chayav, you have to pay for them. Potter. Chayasa. Continues the Mishnah, let's say it healed. You damaged him and he healed, but then Vinistra came back. Chayasa Vinistra, chayav l'rabaisai, you have to continuously pay for the doctor's bills. Chayasa called Sarka, but once it's fully healed, and then even if after it's fully healed, sometimes a disease comes back, that's not your responsibility. But until it is healed, then you have to continuously pay. Next says the Mishnah Sheves. Unemployment, right? It's like Kilu Shemer Kishum. We view him as if he watches cucumbers. Shkar Nasla Demei Yadai, Demei Raglai. He's already paid for the value of his hand. Now you just have to add on the value that he's not going to be able to work right now. Boishes, humiliation. I call if he Mavayish, has to do with the one that inflicts the damage, has to do with the one that received the damage, etc. Says the Gemara, Amai. We start with the first category, which is Nezek. Ask the Gemara, why are you evaluating how much he sold in the market? Says the Torah, you have to pay an eye for an eye, ma'ayin mamish. Sounds like, what do you got to pay? You got to pay an actual eye. So why are we saying that you have to pay for his value devaluation of the slave? Sounds like you have to give an actual eye for damaging him. Says the Gemara, lo sagadaita. That's not what it means. The Tanya we learned in a Bryce. Says the Bryce, you would think that if someone blinded his friend, you should blind hit him. Caught as the other, you cut off someone else's hand, marked as the other, which cut off his hand. She broke his leg, like we just said, the Hava Mina being Ayin Tachazayin is literally, if Ruvain knocks out Shimon's eye, then the Bezdin knocks out Ruvain's eye. Says the Gemara, that is not Pshat. Talmud says the Torah, Maka Adam Maka Behema. We equate a Maka Adam with someone who damages a person with someone who damages an animal. And Maka Behema, just like when one damages an animal, you have to pay for the payment of that which was done. And now let's say someone wants to say the following, that no, you can't equate a human to an adam. The pasuk says, do not accept a payment for the life of a murderer who's deserving to be killed. It sounds like when someone kills someone else, for his nefesh, you can't take a payment. But you could take kaifer for the loss of a tip of limbs, that don't come back. So what do we see? We see, says the Gemara, one thing for sure. We see that in reality, one does not have to pay with the loss of his own limb. Says the Gemara, let's try to figure out what exactly is going on. Hey, Maka, what's this Maka that we're referring to? If you're going to tell me the boss says one who hits an animal has to pay, one who hits a person should be put to death. I'm not talking about damages. That's one pasuk, that if you kill an animal, you have to pay nefesh achas nefesh. The samach and it says nearby ish kitin mum ba'misai. Someone who puts a mum in his friend, kasher asa kain yasalo, what did he do back to him? Says the Gemara, 1 second. Hailamaku, but it's not talking about the one who hits. Haka kamrina, and answers the Gemara, no. Shava from Haka, it says in both psukim, even though it's not the same word, but it says Hakam two psukim. Haka amura bebehema litashlumim, Haka amura be'adam litashlumim. Ask the Gemara further, Vaksev Ishki Yake Kol Nefesh Adam Bois, you must. But the pasuk says if he hits any human, he should be put to death. So what is this? Again, we're struggling to figure out whether it's literal or whether it's payment. And we keep on having psukim that teach us that it's literal. Mois, you must. If you kill someone, you get killed. Answers the Gemara, no. B'mammon, the pasuk is talking about mammon. Asking, how do you know? 3 lines from the medium-sized lines. Mimai b'mammon ema b'misa mamish. Explains the Gemara, lo sagadei tachad, and number 1, dois kish l'mak b'ema yishalmena. Like we just said, there's the hekish between nefesh behema yishalmeno, that just like by the behema doesn't mean literal. So to over here means tashlumim. Void, and furthermore says the Gemara, ksiv basrei kashayitim mum ba'adam kin yinasin b'ay. Shma mina mammon. Period. So that's how we know it's referring to Mammon. Now we go back, and in the previous Bryce, the Gemara had almost a suggestion, and it didn't really resolve it. So now the Gemara says, what was the question if you want to say that maybe we can't bring Yogzir Shava, a comparison from Behema to Adam? Visu Kakasha. Says the Gemara, Tuka Kash Latana. The Tana was bothered. My chazit the alpha tzmaka behema. How do you know which one is learned from which? How do you know Maka Adam is learned from Maka Behema? And therefore it means payment. Maybe Hafach, maybe the opposite. Maybe Maka Behema should be learned from Maka Adam. Explains the Gemara. Amri on the second medium-sized line, done in Nizakim min Nizakim, in done in Nizakim min Misa. Says Gemara, how do you know? Adrabah, done Adam Adam, done Adam Behema. We have both ways, so we don't know which way to darshan. Explains the Gemara, Hainu Diktani. So this is where we learn in Nafshcha Loimar. Hariyomer lo zichul koivel lenefesh artzeach asher hu rosh lamos ki mois yumas lenefesh artzeach. Ya tolekech koiver avla tolekech koivel rosh yevanim sheina chayzim. Ay, v'hay lo zichul koivel lenefesh artzeach lemuti rosh yevarim udasa. Hami baile. We need for a different passage. Damar Achman of the Torah says. We need it for a different drasha. We need to teach us that you don't get double jeopardy. Well, not really, but you don't have to do payment and get killed. Says the Gemara, "Hi, nafka." We learned this from a different pasuk, a very famous drasha. That how do we know that one only gets one punishment for the actors? Says Kidei Rishasai. For there we learn now Rishachas at the Machayva Vieta Machayva. Shtei Rishuyos. You never get two punishments. Says the Gemara. 1 second. Vakati b'ayilei dekamer Rachman lo sichko mamanu siftrei. Answers the Gemara. Mkein lichtav Rachman lo sichu koifer. Lasher rosh l'maves nefesh artzeach lamalish mamina. You know we learn out from over here. Lenefesh roitzeach yatolokeach koifer. But avloteach koifer l'rosh yevanim shein chozim. V'chemiachet chsev lo sichu koifer. Maka lamli. So I don't need the other pasuk. These here shava maka. We would think you have a choice. You want to give value, give value. You want to give your eye, you give your eye. Who would choose such, I don't know, but you would have a choice. And therefore we're learning that no, it's dafka tashlumim. Just like Maka Adam has, just like Maka Behema has to be tashlumim, so too Maka Adam has to be tashlumim. Pick it up from Rav Destai. And Yehuda b'siyata dishmaya.